Hello to all of our listeners out there. Welcome to the first episode of Avenue Talks, our new monthly podcast for students, educators, and industry professionals alike. Join us every month to catch the latest interview with key decision makers in the virtual production industry. Each conversation will dig into how audiences and trends are evolving and where this space is headed. So if that sounds like something that you would enjoy, then make sure to stick around. And with that, I want to introduce our two lovely guests today, Silke and Treshi. Hello, guys. Please share with our audiences who you are and what you've been up to.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi. So my name is Silke and I'm one of the researchers on the project Avenue, and I was looking into VP specifically in education.
Yeah. My name is Treshi and I am working on that research element for Avenue along with Silke. I've actually got a background in psychology but have now moved to the creative industry. So really excited to be on board.
I'm really excited to have you guys on our podcast. Please share, what is the Avenue project all about? What are you aiming to do?
Okay, so kind of broadly speaking, I think Avenue brings together 5 creative ecosystems across Europe. So we've got virtual production, XR, games, animation, and visual storytelling. And these ecosystems comprise educational institutions, an ecosystem driver, and also industry partners. And again, I guess the overarching aim is to strengthen and upskill the workforce, to give them new opportunities. And as part of this, we are currently trying to understand what the skill needs are, where the gaps are, and what that upskilling process could look like.
Yeah, I'm absolutely signing that. And I think what is nice that we have a lot of co-researchers actually. So Trishi and I are not the only ones doing the research, but we have all these wonderful partners out there that actually look into their specific ecosystem. So be it what you said as well, XR, be it games, and try to understand what the skill needs are, the way that we looked into virtual production. And we have, like I said, the education part, we have the industry part, and Trishi and I have the honor to then look at all the different findings and try, which we haven't done yet. So at this very moment, we haven't, but we will. We look into how they compare and contrast with each other. We unfortunately cannot share anything about that yet, but we will hopefully soon.
Yeah, thank you for making the distinction. It's very important that our listeners do take what you say with a grain of salt, because this is more in preparation with the research and the work that you're going to be continue to do in the next 3-4 years.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually some early insights that we have collected in the past few weeks and months. It's nothing yet where we say, oh, wow, this is like the first big groundbreaking results. We're working towards them. So it's going to happen.
It's very iterative, I would say.
Exactly, yeah, that's it.
We are just laying the groundwork to see what the initial landscape of the industry skill needs are, and then we could hone into them.
What is that? What can you share with us today?
Trishi, do you want to start with the industry part?
Yeah, maybe I will have a go at the industry. So we, I think, conducted a total of 7 interviews with some industry partners just to kind of understand what the skill needs are within the industry. So especially if these skill needs are changing amid changes in technology and the introduction of AI, but also what education and industry, what that disparity might be like. And I think one of the strongest insights we derived through this interviews was that virtual production actually needs skilled generalists. Now, the moment you hear generalists, you might say, oh, that is a jack of all trades, someone who knows a little bit about everything. But I think just looking into these interviews in depth, what we are seeing is that what these industry professionals are looking for is quite specialized knowledge across various sectors. So you can't seem to quite succeed in VP if you focus on just one narrow area. And that would make sense because VP in itself, the virtual production in itself, is a very integrated discipline which brings together professionals from different backgrounds. So of course, to do well in this industry, you need to have kind of an integrated set of skills. And maybe you might start off as a 3D artist, move on to become a VFX artist, cinematographer. So what you're seeing is kind of this serial specialization that VP is looking for. And I think typically in these industries, in these sectors, you look at kind of a T-shaped profile. But what we are detecting here based on our findings is that for virtual production, you need kind of an M-shaped profile.
And can you explain to our listeners, what does the M shape signify?
Yeah, so the M shape essentially signifies multiple specializations. You've got in-depth understanding of different areas, providing you with a breadth of understanding across these sectors. And that seems to be what VP is looking for.
A little bit of specialization in a lot of areas. And like you mentioned, a little bit of film and a little bit of games.
A little bit of film, a little bit of games, maybe other sectors as well. You might need a little bit of XR or a little bit of visual storytelling, which I guess might tie into the film bit, yeah.
And where does the role of educational institutions come into play in this aspect?
Yeah, I think what I've detected so far when I talk to 3 educational experts that work with virtual production in their curriculum, just to repeat again, it's been only 3 people that we've been talking to, and there was not really a lot of academic material out there, so there's not a lot of academic papers that talk about education and virtual production challenges. So when I first started looking for information about education in VP, I saw there's a lot of individual case studies out there of education that has started up a VP stage and said, okay, how are we going to go about this? And then there was a lot of individual technical explanations about how they set it up and what they did with the students there and what were the challenges, but it was so specific for that context that it was very difficult to say, okay, in general. I would also say, as I'm sitting here now, it's still very difficult to talk about in general, but what these 3 wonderful interview partners told me is that they do have in general the feeling that they're at the very, very beginning of everything. So there's a growing amount of educational institutions that invest, and it's a big investment, into virtual production. Most of the times, that's what the participants said, is there is not much expertise in education that relates to virtual production per se. So it's not like in these educations, very often, if you, for example, have a games program, then you have a lot of lecturers that have worked many years in games. And then they say, hey, let's educate the younger talents. And I pass on the experience that I have. And it seems to be that that's not so often the case in virtual production. So you have a situation where you have lecturers that are amazing experts in games, in film, in engineering. So we saw like completely different educational programs that said, oh, we have really a good reason for having VP in our curriculum, but have not really the in-depth expertise and skills in virtual production specifically. So they said, we have the feeling we have this amazing opportunity here, and we have students that are excited about it, but we are basically learning while teaching together with the students. And that obviously leads to a lot of challenges that we're talking about.
And do you think this disparity comes from the fact that virtual production is still quite a novel technology?
It's very difficult to say that this is the reason now, because I did not really talk about the specific reason, but I think it's something that has to do with a lot of factors. Like one of the ones that the participants said is that people working in a virtual production are still very much working in that field. So there's not too many out there yet that have years and years of experience and say, oh, yes, let's go and teach now. Because also teaching is entirely different than working in virtual production, right? It's short-term projects. There's not a lot of money. You work not with other experts. You work with young talents that are also like, okay, looking at you, so now tell me what to do. So it's a complete different environment. And according to the participants, it seems to be something where they have difficulties with hiring people directly from the VP industry, so the experts, to say, hey, come over. It might be something that changes in the next years, when there's more out there, or when VP experts say, hey, let's cross over to teaching. But according to the participants, now it's a challenge.
Maybe Treshi can speak to the hiring process for industry, how they view this problem.
So participants didn't really talk about differences or challenges in the hiring process per se. But it seems like amid kind of changes in technology and that integrated nature of virtual production, there is a strong preference for soft skills and looking for soft skills. And there is a need to kind of stay on top of the needs and challenges that come with the use of AI, because that appears to be quite operational within the VP industry. So it's not something that industry professionals go, we're going to stay away from, but they actively engage with it. So I wouldn't say that, at least based on conversations, the 5 conversations we've had with our participants, I wouldn't say that hiring practices have changed, but maybe certain priority areas are shifting a little bit.
And you iterated that those are focuses on soft skills and maybe proficiency with AI. And how are educational institutions targeting that?
No, absolutely. We've seen that as well, that actually one of the advantages of having a VP stage on campus is, according to the participants that I spoke to, that it actually gives them an opportunity to allow students to practice to work together with different sectors and different disciplines. You do that obviously when you work or when you do a study in games development, you already work together with different disciplines, but they're all in one pipeline, yeah? So what a VP stage does is it brings different kind of sectors together. It can be within the creative industry, but it can also be outside. So it doesn't mean that someone that, for example, or an institution that also has, for example, either a relationship with another university that teaches event management or has it, for example, in the same campus, that you take some students from event management and say, okay, hey, work together with game students, work together with film students. Together, this is the project, this is the problem that you have to solve here. You have the technology, you have teachers or more experienced students that help you with the technical part, and go and work. Explore what that tool can do for you in this specific context. So it's not only about learning the technology, and the participants said actually a very, very important teaching objective is as well working together across these different sectors. And that's more challenging than it seems to be, because students are very much educated within their islands so far. So like I said, taking film or taking games, they have learned to work together within their island, obviously, different disciplines. So they've learned to talk each other's language. They're busy working on that. But if you take them out of their environment that they're used to and that they learned the terminology from, quality expectations, workflows, deadlines, and all of that, and say, hey, here you go. Now you work with someone from film, and you work with someone from games, and someone from engineering. Hop you go, do it. It's a very important skill, according to the participants. So the educator says it's really worth gold. But it is challenging for everyone involved. So it's not an easy thing. It's not something that happens like very automatically. So students and educators work really hard on it. But they see that it's worth it because it's a skill that is very much valued in the industry.
And I just want to go back to the importance of language or terminology. Is that something that came up with your interviews, Treshi?
Very strongly. So I think one of the kind of soft skills that participants highlighted as being important was having strong communication skills. And what was really striking here is that these communication skills were not just good people skills. It was very functional because, again, you've got to have the professional lingua to communicate your creative idea to somebody from a slightly different discipline. So you've got films in particular and games coming together, and these two different disciplines need to come to a unique and shared vision of what the final product is going to be like. So communication and coordination becomes really, really functional and important for virtual production. So it's a really important soft skill.
Yeah.
I guess that's where the role of the generalist comes into play again, because they know a bit more about what is happening in the film industry or in the games industry, and they know how to collaborate and communicate their ideas.
Absolutely. I mean, this just brings to mind an example that a participant presented is when they said, you could be a fantastic Unreal Engine artist, but if you can't speak to filmmakers, then that would be a problem.
Yeah, and I think it goes even beyond, so in the educational context, but I assume it's very similar to what you've heard as well, is it goes beyond terminology, right? It goes about hierarchies as well. So when you have someone that is being trained mostly to work behind a computer, right? So they are not trained in film set rules, right? Well, someone that has been trained in film, they know when to walk through the set, which cables to pull, which ones not, when to speak, when not, how to speak. and, not to speak in that case, or in what manner to speak. And there was something that the education participants also said. It's quite interesting to see in their role, next to just teaching everyone the technology and teaching them workflows and everything. But they said they're also actually taking on the role of the translator, and that goes beyond that terminology. That's one thing, but that can be quickly sorted out. But then also saying, okay, good. The film people are used to a way, way stricter hierarchy. Yeah, so you don't only, and I think I used one of your examples, which was then also applied in education, walk up to the director and just correct them, right? And that is something that, for example, someone from game would have perhaps less problems with. They don't even see the issue, while the one that is a director, even though it's students, but they've learned that role has an authority on set. And if then another student comes and means very, very well and says, I think I would not do that, I would do it differently, because in their discipline, that is exactly what they need to do and what they're asked to do. So they learned that within their education. But then all of a sudden you have this clash that goes beyond just talking the terminology that the other one understands. And that was also quite interesting.
I think that's probably heavily supported by the practical projects and interdisciplinary projects that you've talked about, having on-set experience with access to that kind of technology like we have here at the Breda University of Applied Sciences. A lot of students work with the XR stage, collaborate, and they get to learn those on-set practices, like you've mentioned before. What is the plan for the future with your research? Is that something that you are able to share with us?
We'll be very happy to share that. Yes, of course. So I think what we've kind of identified so far are which directions we could focus on. So we kind of see that there is a balance of soft skills and technical skills needed. So when I mentioned soft skills earlier, it didn't mean that the technical skills were less important. They were as important as the soft skills are, at least to work in virtual production. So what we, I think, want to do going forward is to really start understanding what these soft skills are and what these technical skill needs are and how important they are for virtual production, but also across each of our other ecosystems, so that we could start identifying similarities and potential overlap in skill needs. Because in the end, they are creative industries. It would be really useful to understand where students could potentially cross boundaries across these ecosystems.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've read a lot about it, that the so-called portfolio career in these industries is something that become stronger and stronger, that you might start in one industry, but then out of whatever reasons, you end up in a completely different one. And then you have a former colleague that calls you and says, hey, I'm working this project. I know you're amazing what you do. Come over, work with me. And they're like, oh my God, I've never worked for film. Doesn't matter. You have the skills. You can do this. Don't worry. As long as you're open, adaptable, and you want to learn new things, come over. I know you can do this. So a lot obviously goes via who knows whom and who works with whom and who works well and might bring the skills. And then it's all about being able to adapt to the new situation and being able to learn whatever new software is needed. But if you bring the skills plus the technical skills plus the soft skills, also this openness and adaptability and an idea of I can always learn and I can grow into a new sector, then that is actually something that we see is increasingly important in these industries, not only in VP. I think what we've seen so far, carefully spoken, because we haven't done the analysis yet, but we see that there is overarching a need for that kind of possibility and that skill to have that.
You talk about technical skills, soft skills, adaptability, having a portfolio, and being well connected. I think for young creatives and students that comes as quite overwhelming. And how do they navigate this whole ecosystem?
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, I know when the moment I said something about portfolio, I knew that's coming, because it is a red flag. I have the feeling for everyone. It's so important because it's one of the or one of the most important ways of showcasing your work and your skills, right? That is also not a secret. We all know that, and we all know that it's a competitive field out there. So there's a lot of people, be it juniors, but also seniors, that are actually looking for jobs. So we do know that the portfolio is actually something that is very important for every individual. And when I now want to, and that's what I would like to do, related back to virtual production, we've seen there as well in education that the educators that I talked to said, especially especially with VP education, that is quite challenging, because what VP education focuses on is on the process and not the product at the end. Has a lot of reasons, and I mean, the most obvious one is it's very technical. A lot of people come in and they just don't have the skills to produce something absolutely polished at the end, which is portfolio worthy. Quotation marks, portfolio worthy. And so the teachers are coming up with objectives that are very much on process, workflows, communication skills, anything that you name. But the students come in there and they see wonderful technology and they're like, oh my God, if I can put that into my portfolio, wonderful. I mean, that is something I can perhaps differentiate myself, right, from the others. And the educators said very often students come with this hope in there that they can create this amazing portfolio piece. But it is not always the case. The time is very limited. There's a lot of students, one stage, right? So how much time do you have? So it's not possible to do many iterations. It's also sometimes technical limitations and skill limitations of the students to bring it to that level, that what they have in mind, that they say, oh, wow, this is something I can showcase. So there is a lot of friction there. And there's also, what the educators said, a lot of emotions that...
Ego.
As well. Yeah, and just also sadness, because they say, hey, I have so little time because my education asks a lot from me. And I put my time and my energy into this project, and I have to now have a look if it's worth it, because perhaps nothing comes out of it. And even though they might understand that the process is very important, but it's always this kind of push and pull. How much can I put into a project if it's not portfolio worthy? So that's something that the educators said as well, that they together with the students try to solve as much as they can. So for example, one educator said, like, we offer students that really, really would like to put the extra effort into it and would like to have something that they deem to be portfolio worthy, that they can, after the official workshop that they are visiting, put extra time into it. But that means also that the studio has to be available. It means the technical staff has to be available. So there's a lot of money and time put from university side into individual students. So it is something that they're trying to figure out at the moment, but educators are very much aware of that need. So they know that students need that, and they understand that students have only that amount of time in their study time, and that they have to be also very selective. So it's complex, complicated, and I haven't found a solution with these participants. It would have been nice if one would have said, we have the wonderful solution for it, but they haven't found it yet.
Hopefully at some point in the next 4 years, a solution arises. But I wanted to get your opinion, Treshi. How is the industry viewing portfolios, the importance of portfolios?
I think portfolios are important, but what they were really talking about is they were talking about having a balance of skills, soft and technical, less so focused on the portfolio, which in some regard actually aligns with what the educators are saying. So focus on the process, less so the product. And I think what I would also say is sometimes you might not get all of these skills just through your degree. And this is what one of the participants mentioned. So they said, you need a degree or you need some understanding of film production. This might not come from your degree, and that's okay. So you might be a graduate from games. What you can do is just sign up for an additional internship or a short course on film production that gives you an understanding of basic editing, screenwriting, and cinematography. And that just allows you to dip your toe in this field. So it doesn't mean that education needs to cover everything and you've got to have this full skill set to land your first position. So when I mentioned that you need these specializations, what we see is that these specializations are serially developed. So you wouldn't have all of the specializations ready for your first position. And I think understanding that is extremely important. Just to kind of go back to something we discussed earlier, that understanding of kind of film production culture is really important. So understanding the hierarchies, especially if you're from a games background and you're used to those flat hierarchies, and you go into a production set and you realize that the director's word is essentially law. I think having that understanding is really useful through perhaps an internship or speaking to somebody. Having that understanding is useful because, according to participants, it leads to a form of a very healthy self-selection where you go, oh, this is for me or this isn't for me. And you know what? If you realize this early on in your career, it's not a failure. It's actually a really good form of clarity to have, to say, okay, I've tried this. It's not for me. It's a learning experience, and then you can move forward. So
I think it could be quite empowering, especially with what Silke was saying, that then you don't get as overwhelmed. Then you can really cater your portfolio to exactly what you're aiming to do, what your dream career is. Maybe quite a comforting thought, I think. What do you think that industry as well as education can do to target these problems?
That's a loaded question.
Exactly, you see it on our faces. I think the two of us don't have a solution for that. That is very difficult, and I think one of the goals of Avenue is to actually look into that together with the participants more. Right? So we would like to have an understanding of what are best practices out there and what are potential solutions and what are experiences out there in terms of trying to cater industry needs. At this very moment, I have to be very honest, I have no answer to this question that I would feel comfortable giving.
Yeah, I could just share with potential, I guess, young professionals some advice from industry experts, if that helps. So one of the things that they mentioned is that the industry, lots of creative industries, but specifically they mentioned virtual production because that was our conversation, is highly networked, highly connected. So they highlighted the importance of going to, meetings and conferences and always speaking to professionals at the end if you can. So really try to build a network from the get-go. And they highlighted the importance of staying curious. And I think what was really striking here is they said, pick up a DSLR from your university, go around, take some photos, play around with the little settings. So, it is really hard to sometimes build or bridge that gap between industry and education. But there are little things, I guess, that students could do to try and upskill themselves to make sure that they stay on top of some of the technology.
Mm-hmm. I think on that note, from the education part, I heard as well that collaboration also there is one way of trying to solve some of the issues that they have, so some of the challenges. So they work together with other universities. They work together with other education. First of all, to not have the same virtual production facilities right next to each other, which would be actually something very expensive and difficult. But they would say, okay, if you have this kind of facilities, we might spend the money in these kind of facilities, and we work on exchanges of our students so that we give them actually all kind of different experiences with different technologies. And that is just one way of trying to solve these issues. But that also helps then to use actually the advantages, because not every university or education institution has all these different disciplines in one house. So it could easily be that you say, hey, it would be interesting if engineers work together with film people, so let's have a film institution work together with a more technical institution. So perhaps the engineers know a lot more technical stuff, where the film people are like, oh my God, I'm happy if you take care of that. Then we actually do the stuff that we know and can in this way hopefully work wonderfully together and create something that we would individually not been able to do. So it's a lot, I think, like what you said, connecting, exchange, working together, collaborating, also on the level of educational institutions.
And speaking on that collaboration with other educational institutions, as I understand, you are just coming back from France, where you also presented these first-year findings. I want to ask, how was that? What were the other ecosystems' impression of it?
Okay, maybe I'll start. First of all, I would just like to say it was nice to meet the partners we'd been working with for about 6 months or so now, because I think we initially contacted them about the research element around May, June, so it was really lovely meeting them. I would say overall their insights seem to align with our insights, but there might be slight changes or slight disparities across that balance of skill needs. So the technical and soft skill needs might shift across some of these industries a little bit. I can't really say a lot more than that because we haven't yet done a full in-depth analysis, but I think just capturing those nuances of these balance, the shifts in skill needs was quite interesting to me.
Yeah. No, I also found it wonderful to meet the people in person. It's nice so we can write emails and then we can have Teams or Zoom meetings, but it does not replace just being in the same place at the same time and have also these informal conversations, which was very interesting and insightful for me as well, because I can write a question and I can do some questionnaires and whatever. And there's for sure someone on the other side that in their best intent tries to fill it in or answer the questions that I have. But when you have a coffee together and you just talk about, hey, what were you doing yesterday? Or you look stressed, everything okay? And they're like, oh my God, we're talking about this at the moment. And all of a sudden you get complete different insights. And it's quite interesting to say, hey, wow, this is something new. I have not heard that. Or, oh yeah, you relate to it. Or we have the same. Or you just listen in sometimes. And I think that was for me extremely beneficial to have these informal conversations and hear what people perhaps don't even see important themselves, because it's just something we have to fix. But actually, it's something perhaps not only they have to fix, but others as well. And it would be worth talking about it in a more structured way.
I think something that you've mentioned before in one of your lectures that I've sat in is that especially in those informal conversations, you can get a lot of information and a lot of inspiration for future research. So it's good to hear that you had that experience.
Yeah. Now I'm already like super happy that someone remembers things.
That's the goal.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it is just like everything, right? Like the three of us, we're sitting here now as well, right? This is not informal because we know we are recorded, yeah? So I'm sure the moment that this switches off, like Treshi and I, and also you, we start like, oh yeah, and this and that. So sometimes, these moments that you feel not observed and that you feel like free to talk about everything, then all of a sudden ideas come and you're like, oh no, I should have said that before. So I'm sure they will come up now as well, but I hope you invite us back as well. So we take notes of these informal conversations that Treshi and I have together, and then we bring them all with us next time and share them with you.
Please do. I think that there is definitely a plan to bring you guys on the next time that you do a big breakthrough in your research again.
Hopefully.
And I'm
Sounds big.
I'm super curious to hear what your timeline of the next few years looks like.
I always look at Treshi because Treshi is the one that is organized in this way.
So we plan to have our research methodology for the second year done and dusted towards March next year. So before that, big shout out to our first Avenue report, which is going to come out in February. So stay tuned for that. You'll see a lot more of the insights and like those disparities and similarities we spoke of outlined in that report for February. But the second year research will start in February, and then we hope to have that established by March, and then continue data collection through, I think, April, analyze that data in May and June. With an aim of having our report ready for October next year. And if all goes well, we'll follow sort of a very similar cycle in subsequent years.
So if you see our website or if you see our LinkedIn account and you see the link to a survey and you fit to the participants that we're looking for, please take your time and share your insights with us, because we need every voice actually that has some experience, either education or in the fields that we're looking into. And I'm sure we share these survey links very frequently in the upcoming years. So please be part of it, because it's not the two of us and it's not the partners that actually come up with that knowledge, but it's actually the people out there that every day work in education and in the industry that we need so that we can sit here and talk about findings. So please, 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 I know you all work very hard, but if a link for a survey comes by, please fill it out and share your knowledge with us.
And for our listeners, go check out our website where you'll be able to find the upcoming reports, avenuecove.eu, and as Silke mentioned, any possible surveys on our LinkedIn at avenuecove. We need all the help we can get, because How many participants are you aiming for?
As many as we can get. There's always an ideal, obviously, but we have to see as well for the different ecosystems, how many do have the time. So we're very much aware of it, that the people that we're exploring these topics with are busy. However, we try to give something back as well in collecting all this knowledge and hopefully reporting something that is relevant also to everyone. So I'm very cautious with using numbers. Do you want to say something about it, Treshi, or you?
Well,
to be determined.
Yeah, to be determined, I would say right now, just because we're just trying to get through the first year report. So I'm not going to maybe say exactly how many participants would like to try and have in our second year study.
We don't want to bias anyone.
We don't want to bias anyone, but we would like
exactly. The more the better.
Yeah.
The more the better. Now, I think that's with everything, right? If we want to have information that is meaningful, right? So it is the best if we have a lot of voices that we can collect. And so I don't want to limit it to say like we want to have this amount. So just a shout out, if you see the link, again, click on it, spend the time, click through it, and be part of it.
Should take about 15 minutes tops.
That one we know. That one
we could say for sure.
I feel like they always say 15
teaser.
minutes.
It's a teaser. 15 minutes is all we're asking for.
Yeah, and usually we also ask at the end if you would like to, for example, join an interview focus group or something later on, or work with us in whatever way, just always contact us. So we have usually at the survey at the very end, if you feel comfortable talking to us, and obviously it's anonymous, but if you would like to share more with us, you can always leave your email address, or if you would like to contact us in other ways, so there is our contact details on the website, so please feel free to contact us.
And how is your current research guiding you for the next steps? How is that going to shape your next objective, your next...
So for the second year, what we've kind of used is the fact that across industries, there was reference to the importance of both soft skills and technical skills. But because we've just interviewed a handful of participants, we were not able to get kind of a near exhaustive list of soft and technical skills. So what we'd really like to do is try and establish that across the industries, and also their perceived importance. So it's not just what the skills are, but to what extent are they relevant to each of our ecosystems.
What are other interesting findings from this first year that you can share with us that we haven't discussed yet? Something that sticks out to you?
I think, jumping completely back to findings now, I think one that I think a lot of, I think because I can visualize it, is that the educators said that they wear many hats, right? So they're the ones that set up the studios, that maintain the studios, that try to understand the studios and the technology. They try to get other educators excited about it, because at the moment very often it's a one-person show that runs everything and it showcases it at open days and. So they say it would be really nice to get my colleagues on board as well, which is very often a matter of time, because all the colleagues are very, very busy with teaching their own expertise, and they don't have that much time to also spend a significant amount of time learning the new technology. But they said it would be great if we would be a bigger team, and that leads me to the next task that they have. So basically trying to understand how the technology works in the setting of education. That means that there's a lot of limitations. So you work with people that have no clue what they're doing there. So you have to not only make sure that the technology is being safe from the students, so that we're talking people perhaps saying, oh, what is that plug here? Or I'm going to switch something off quickly, which might have bigger implications than just switching something off. Or let's pull these levers and see what happens. So that is one thing that the educators have to be careful as well. They want the students to explore, but only to the extent that they do not actually break something, but also that they don't break themselves. So it can also be quite a safety issue if students that are not used to work in a highly technical film set, that they trip over cables. Or one of the examples was that their students had a sword fight in front of the wall, in front of the screen, the LED wall. And you can see that already, right? We're having a sword fight. We're getting all excited. We're having fun. Exactly everything that you should have. And then, whoop, one of the swords flies, and it flies into the direction of the LED wall. And that is perhaps even the best scenario here, because you have others like the camera operators as well there. But also that is the job of an educator, to make sure that the students are safe, that the technology is still working the next day for the next group. Another task is that they have to come up with a very, very complex schedule to get, 100-something students into one stage within a very short amount of time, because the students don't have time for years to then say, okay, I start in the first year and you do it in the fourth year. So they have perhaps half a year and 130 students. That is an amazing scheduling act to do that. And for sure, one where we hopefully can also help with as Avenue is there's hardly any information out there that talks about education and experiences teaching virtual production. So there is individual bits and pieces out there, but the educator said there is not really like when you teach games, there is so much out there already on experience, on how to teach it. And with virtual production, there is really not so much out there. So which is on one hand a challenge, because everyone is kind of trying out while they're teaching and see what works best. But on the other hand, the educators also said, hey, it's actually quite an opportunity. When you work at a VP stage in a commercial setting, you don't have the time and the money to explore and try out new things. And we do have that. So this is our goal. This is where we want to be. We want to actually be the ones that generate knowledge just by exploring, because we have that freedom. So this is a little bit where they want to go to. But what I just tried to do is here to summarize all these different tasks that someone has when we just summarize it by teaching VP. So it actually is a lot more than teaching virtual production. And that really stuck with me. I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I haven't thought about it that way. And the list is longer. So I just mentioned a few things.
I think it was really interesting to understand that if you were teaching, you're not just thinking about the curriculum. You're not just thinking about maybe pairing up with a film school if you're a games academy, so you could get that interdisciplinary connection going from the get-go. But it's really thinking about the practical aspects that come with teaching virtual production, like protecting the equipment from the students and the students from the equipment, and making sure that there are no swords flying around. So that, I think, is really interesting, because it is really a big part of teaching.
And I think one thing that also there was actually for the industry as well, one thing I found still interesting was that for virtual production, it goes actually even beyond the technical skills and the soft skills. One of the things that we discussed as well, for example, if you're good in welding, a great skill to have in virtual production. Not necessarily something you would learn at university, but if you are handy with tools, with building a set, with 3D printers, because whatever tool you need is so expensive that it's not in the budget for that production. And you think about it, I know something about 3D printing, or I know welding, or I know woodwork, or whatever. Perhaps I can just do something that is good enough for that one shot. And that was also something that stuck with me. I was like, oh, wow, this is like a complete different skill, or skills even.
I think that's interesting, because it links back to soft skills for me, because what you've got is a problem-solving mindset. Yes. And I remember one of the participants mentioning that with virtual production, you've got this hurry up and wait as well, because you've got to problem solve, and that might take various forms, it looks like. But you've got to problem solve under pressure with this hurry up and wait mentality, where all of a sudden something might be needed and you've got to solve the issue in 10 minutes with 20 people around you. And then for the next 2 hours, you'd have nothing to do until the scene has been shot. So hurry up and wait. And again, something you need to be okay with.
What else has stuck out to you, Treshi, from your interviews that you'd want to share?
I think that for me, it was really the importance of soft skills and how they were foundational for everything else. So, for instance, again, granted these were just a few participants we spoke to, off the top of my head, they highlighted the importance of curiosity, and they gave various examples of what that might look like for virtual production. So, for instance, it could just be that you've got to stay on top of all the new developments of tools and updates to these various tools. And based on their kind of discussion, it was not just lifelong learning or just staying on top of these tools and knowing what the tools are, but also willing to engage with them. So it's kind of this active engagement with various tools, being curious to that extent. And kind of, again, talking of adaptability, it's just sort of saying, right, maybe at university you've learned a certain type of software, But when you join a studio, it's possible that they don't use that software because perhaps that license is a bit too expensive. So just being adaptable and open to shift away from something that you are used to was considered really important. So it's really, and having that, I guess, that drive to me is kind of also more than a skill. It's a way of being, it's kind of a mindset. And I think those explanations were quite, profound.
How ready is the industry to, I guess, support young creatives in that?
So again, speaking to participants, they seemed very open to the idea of there being a learning curve, and they wanted to invest time, at least based the participants that we spoke to, and they were very understanding when they described students who said, "Okay, thank you for this opportunity. This industry is not for me." So I think the industry to me seemed quite open, really, at least the people we spoke to.
Mm-hmm. I found it also interesting in looking into the hiring processes because it's so very specific what they're looking for, right? It's not only the skills that you show in your CV and the portfolio, it's really the soft skills, this mindset that plays a very important role. And what I've heard was that getting someone on board, so choosing someone to say, hey, it would be wonderful if you join our team, is not only based on that technical skill. So what the people that I talk to are still struggling with is finding a way that is not cost intensive to see if that person, even though they might have excellent skills, fit the team and fit the job. And also for that person to very quickly find out, is that the world I fit in? So on paper, they might be amazing for that job, right? So they have all the skills, they have learned 15 different softwares already. So on paper, it looks amazing, but then living it is a completely different thing. And what I've heard so far is that if they get someone in and they put all this time and money into onboarding that person, and then both or one of them decides it does not fit, so that's a very expensive endeavor. So I've heard that they're trying to figure out on how to create different kind of processes to see, are we fitting to each other? Is that environment, a VP environment, really one that you want to be in, or that we see that you can flourish in, so that both actually come out of this experience and have a benefit from it? There were several possibilities they talked about, but they were all the ones that I've been talking to still searching for the right tools, methods.
I suppose it's not only on the industry to rectify that hiring process, it's also on the young creatives or graduates to highlight those soft skills. Yeah, challenging. I think it is challenging because I've heard both sides, and again, not generalizable because I haven't spoken to a representative group of people, but the ones that I talk to the people I spoke to in terms of interviews, or also the informal conversations again, and also in the different conferences that I've been in the last 2 years, I think this portfolio is a very specific piece because many of the students or young graduates have said, look, I don't come from a family that has family members that have been working in that industry. So, for example, my father works in a bank, my mother works as a doctor. They know how to apply in these fields. They can give me tips on how I have to dress for an interview and how to behave and what kind of things I should write on my CV. But that is not what I need for my specific field. So it's very difficult for them to find out. And then they see these amazing portfolios out there, on social media as well as on whatever platform they try and get inspiration. And they just think like, oh my God, I look so different. Should I now mimic that style, or should I, just be very courageous and do something entirely different? So what is it? So they're looking and they're searching. So now on top you have that kind of idea of the industry that says, come on, you're an artist. You can be creative and showing yourself on top, but that would mean doing something entirely different.
And that is perhaps perceived by some students as something that is too much because they don't know yet. They are just in the beginning on how different can they be, while they very well know that they have to be different. But how different? And they have no reference in their direct context that can help them step by step in their specific choices that they make. Long answer, I know, but it's also a very complex topic. So portfolio, every time I think when I mention it, it was like, oh my word.
As a young creative, as a young graduate, I can speak to that. I think it's very difficult to feel that burden on yourself and choosing the right role and curating the perfect portfolio, the perfect CV. And I think that a lot of people also relate that to the kind of crunch culture in the games industry and the very fast-paced nature of the films industry. Like you've mentioned, Treshi, you have to be able to act under pressure. And is that something that has been mentioned in your conversations with the industry, that kind of like burnout or crunch culture? What is the industry trying to do to create healthier creatives, young creatives?
Ooh, that is a very interesting question. It was not really something we directly addressed within our data set. So I don't want to really venture a guess here specifically for virtual production. But what was quite clear is that, especially for films and film production, you do have to put in very long hours. And again, that kind of linked back to that, having an awareness of film production culture and being okay with that. So I think that is all I could say, but exactly how the industry is working towards mitigating potential crunch was not something that I think came up in my interviews at least.
I also did not have it as one of the core topics because we definitely put a pin into it for later because it is something to be explored. But in that specific conversations that I had, it was mentioned as something that the educators keep an eye on. I did not hear it with this group of people that I talked to now specifically in the workshop itself, but they are very much aware, like I said before already, that the students have a lot of different projects that they're working on, and they're aware of it, that next to all of these workshops, they work on their portfolio and on perhaps other projects that make them be different than all the others out there, right? So there was the awareness of how busy students are and that VP is work intensive. So I've heard that they're aware of it, but we did not yet go deeper into that subject.
I think it goes back to what you said, that it's more about seeing if this person is a good fit for the role and if this role is a good fit for the person. And I just want to ask you to kind of wrap it up for our listeners, and we've kind of pandered more to our young creative audiences here. What are some encouraging words for educators, young creatives, industry professionals that you can share with us? Send them off.
Yeah. I think what I've heard from the educators was they hope that they can create projects and they can create little bubbles where the students can explore together with the teachers. I think that made for me VP very, very special, VP education, when I heard that, because usually you have these very experienced lecturers, supervisors, mentors that have years of experience in the industry, and you kind of look up to them, right? So you're like, oh, wow, you worked on that game or you worked in that film, wow. In VP, I've heard it's different. So some educators have slight issues with that because all of a sudden the students might be faster in understanding the technology than they are. But a lot of educators, they say, when you are in this area and you realize I'm not an expert in that, but I am used to be this adaptable person, I can quickly go in there and I have fun doing that and I have fun exploring. And I find a group of students that are actually having fun exploring this with me together. Then we can create something amazing. Not only the product, but also knowledge around how we do this here. And I think that was something that stuck with me and that I would like to actually pass on to students. If this is something that you're interested in, and this is something you say, I would like to learn more about it, know that there's an educator on the other side that is looking for you, that actually would like to explore this together with you. It might be a different relationship than you have had with your lecturers so far, but they're happy if someone says, hey, can we do this together, for an hour or two, show me how this works, and then, I'd like to play around with it and we do this together. just speak with them and try to find the time to explore and play around with the technology.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. I thank you ladies for coming on to the Avenue Talks podcast to talk about the research findings from the first year of the Avenue project. Super exciting. I think we talked about some really good stuff. To all of our listeners who are interested in exploring virtual production more, please visit our website at avenuecove.eu. As Silke mentioned, there is the Avenue Buddy system where you can get one-on-one mentorship from our virtual production experts, and they're eager to meet you and to help you not only curate your portfolio, but send you off on the right track. And if you are interested in gaining hands-on experience with the virtual production stage here at Breda University of Applied Sciences, you can apply through the Avenue residencies. You can find all of the forms on our website, again, avenuecove.eu. And make sure to follow along on our LinkedIn page at avenuecove to stay updated on new podcast episodes, upcoming podcast episodes with you guys, and what the other ecosystems are doing to redefine the educational landscape. And we'll see you on the next one. Wave goodbye.
Oh, we're waving. Hey, bye.